Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today, my guest is Kristy Hunter. Hey, Kristy.
Hello.
So nice to have you on this early morning, 5
Yes.
a.m. in Utah.
It is nice and early here, and I'm so excited to be here.
So, yeah, I'm going to read your bio just so people can know who you are. Kristy
Wonderful.
Hunter is the youngest of 11 children and graduated from BYU as a recreational therapist in 2001. She has worked with at-risk teens, seniors, children with autism, and Special Olympics. Kristy is a musical director, vocal coach, and songwriter. She loves working with people and helping them use their voice to connect with their own emotions and their audience. Kristy is the musical director for Center Stage Youth Performers in Lindon, Utah, as well as Lakeview Academy in Saratoga Springs, and works with over 200 students, 8 to 18 each year. She is a master at helping people build confidence and prepare for their auditions, performances, and speeches. With over 20 plus years of experience as both a performer and director, she knows exactly what it takes to get cast. Kristy is the mother of three incredible kids. She and her husband live in Eagle Mountain, Utah, where Kristy runs the Vogel Connection LLC voice studio, teaching students of all ages in person and through online lessons. Okay, well, we would love to hear your story, Kristy.
Thank you so much for inviting me on today. Yeah, I am the youngest of 11 children. My mother was 46 when she had me, which I am 45. And I think about like having a baby next year and I go, oh my gosh, I just don't think I could do that. My youngest is 10. So I'm like, whoo, that's kind of crazy. But yeah, we had a huge family. And because of that, I kind of, in order to stand out, I was quite a loud child. I would like sing in the middle of the living room and spin. And there's all these stories of how I was always trying to like grab attention. So it doesn't surprise me that I ended up on stage because I loved being able to like be clapped for and have people like notice that I was there. Because when you have such a big family and there's so much going on, it's really easy to kind of disappear just because there's so many people. It's not because even you mean to disappear. It's just there's so many people. So I found if I wanted to be known that I was in the room, I had to kind of make myself known. And the best way I found to do that in a not annoying way was by performing. So from a very young age, I started performing, and I think it was in my first play when I was like 5 years old. And I just loved singing and acting and all of those things. And so I did that all through high school, junior high, high school. And then as I got a little bit older, I was actually, when I was 16, I went to what's called Young Ambassadors Camp at BYU. And I was so excited. I also, being from a family of 11 kids, money wasn't always like affluent, right? Like my dad was a professor, he had a really good job, but there's a lot of people. And so I had a paper out back in the day of paper outs, and I saved up my money so I could go to Young Ambassadors Camp, which I was so excited about. I had practiced and practiced, and I got to this camp, and the very first day you audition for the part you're going to have, and you're there for a week. And I auditioned and I got the lead as Annie in the big, it's like the end of the week is the huge presentation. So I was so excited. Like here I'd saved up to go to this, I'd practiced for this, I'd get there. And then partway through, I think it was Monday we got there, it was Wednesday, I'm at the dance class and my knee dislocates in the middle of the dance class. And it was bad enough. I had to leave camp and go to the doctor, and I had to get a brace, and I was on crutches. And I was really frustrated because here I had been practicing, but they were so nice. They're like, it's okay. We'll adjust choreography. We'll like put you in this basket. We'll do this. And I was like, okay, we're going to keep going. The next morning I wake up with laryngitis, no voice, like gone, like completely gone. And I remember going to the doctor, and they looked at my vocal cords and they're like, there's nothing wrong. But I had no voice. like none. And I ended up having to give up the part. And I was devastated. I was completely and utterly devastated. Here I had worked so hard to get to this point. I'd worked so hard to have this role, and I didn't understand why. And my sister, my parents were out of town. They were in like New York. My sister came, my married sister came and picked me up, and I just remember being in her house just bawling my eyes out because I couldn't sing. I couldn't dance. I just lost the role that I had worked so hard for. And in that moment, I kind of was like, I guess I'm not meant to do this. I took on this limiting belief at that moment that like I couldn't go for big things.
Mhm.
And I did go to the performance at the end of the week and just cried in the audience. And all the kids were so great. They like surrounded me and hugged me and were so sweet. But it was a pivotal moment because before then I had been like, I'm going to go to Broadway. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do all of these things. And in that moment, I kind of, when everything fell apart, it was almost like I felt like I wasn't meant to do big things. And so after that, I kind of shifted. I was like, well, originally I was like, I'm going to try out for Young Ambassadors when I go to BYU and I'm going to do this. And then I was like, things like that don't work out for me, was what was in my brain. So I shifted and I was like, well, instead I'm going to go and I'm going to do recreational therapy. So when I went to college, I wanted to be a music or a drama therapist because I wanted to help people. I loved people. And I now had this idea that I couldn't be a professional performer because things like that don't happen for me. And so I was shifting. I'm like, oh, I'm going to help people. That's supposed to be what I'm supposed to do. And they didn't have a music or drama therapy program at BYU, but I had a scholarship. So I was like, well, I'm going to still go there. So I decided to go into what's called recreational therapy because it's very broad. And then I was able to get a minor in music and a minor in psychology. And I was able to incorporate, I took tons of music classes as well as theater classes and incorporate that into what I was learning as a rec therapist. So when during that time, I still performed. I did tons of community theater. I did perform at BYU in their shows. But my idea of like going to Broadway or going to have my own recordings and all these things kind of got smushed, if I should say, even though I'd had years and years of training. So I end up graduating in rec therapy, which is a fabulous profession. I start working with teens. I went to Georgia and worked at a psychiatric hospital for adolescents. And I started realizing how much music can affect people in so many ways, because especially when they feel stuck in their lives. And if you're having a hard time talking about things, you can put on a certain type of song or a song with certain lyrics. And people who are really closed will begin to open up. They'll begin to be able to talk a little bit more. They might start crying because the song will touch them in a certain way. And because of that, then they're able to talk about it. And I started to implement not only with teens, but also with my ability to work with children with autism. So I was trained in ABA, and I would go into in-homes, and I used music all the time to work with these kids. Some of these kids were nonverbal, but you would sing with them, and they'd imitate the sounds you were making. And there were just so many things that music could do to bring out parts of these kids that without the music didn't happen. And so as I started seeing all of these different connections in my profession, I realized like it is so empowering to help people connect their true emotions with their voice, and then not only be able to like hear it and experience the music, but then to be able to share that music. So I really, from that time, I was sold the music is the way to help people, but I was still pretty young, right? And I was actually going through some things in my life like infertility. So I really wanted to have kids. My husband and I had been married 5 years. I was working as a rec therapist. He was graduated, and we were doing really well. I was still performing at youth theaters and at community theaters, but we weren't getting pregnant. And this was really hard because everyone around me was having kids. And I thought, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. So we decided to join the Peace Corps because I wanted to feel like I was doing something I needed to get in Utah. Like everyone has babies at 19. It's this like everyone gets married really young and you start having babies. And at this point, I was almost 25 and I was still not having babies. So I felt like I can't do this anymore. I need to get out of here. So we got called to Mongolia and we went to Mongolia and we lived in a tent for 2 years and we were teacher trainers. So we worked with English teachers who were learning how to teach English as a second language. And we did that as well as teaching life skills. So in the summer, we would go to all of the different little villages and we would teach the teens there life skills on how to stay away from alcohol, pregnancy prevention, how to, like, if there was abuse and how to report and different things. And it was, we used a lot of my rec therapy experience to create these camps and help these kids really like learn how to empower them. And so during that 2 years while I was there, I had the opportunity, I was able to sing in this huge a conference hall. There was probably, I don't know, 800 people there. And then I ended up on Mongolian radio, which which was which was one of those really funny experiences because I'd been asked to perform and I went up to sing and I had always sung the song a cappella because it was a Mongolian song that was one of their traditional songs that I'd learned when I first got there. Well, all of a sudden they put on music, like they start this karaoke track. It's not in the right key. Like it's a completely different key. In fact, it's a key that I knew that if I sang in, I wouldn't be able to hit the notes because I'm a mezzo soprano and it was like super high. And I was standing there going, if I try and match this tune, I am going to fail. And I don't want to fail because I know I'm going to rock this song. So I stopped everything. I'm like, stop the music, stop the music. So they stopped the song. I'm like, I have to sing this, I'm like, no music. I don't want any music. I'm singing it my way. And everyone in the audience is like, okay. And then I did. I sang it my way and it was awesome and everyone loved it. And there was this empowerment there of, I know how I need to make this delivery. They don't know. They're trying to be helpful, but sometimes when people are helpful, they're not helpful. And rather than, I think I could have just stayed back and been like, oh, that's too scary to like actually say what I need. But I realized like, if I don't, this is going to fail. So I have to use my voice and I'm not going to do it in a mean way. I'm going to do it in a way that's very like polite, but also that gets what I need. Right. And in that, I was able to be successful. They played it on the radio and I had a lot of people that then had me perform other things. And it was just a really empowering experience to realize because I was able to be strong enough to use my voice and say what I need, the event was even more successful where I could have thought this is so embarrassing. I just have to go with it. And that mind shift was really important. So that was kind of my fun experience in the middle of nowhere, Mongolia, which if you don't know where Mongolia is, it's below Siberia and above China, and it gets to -40 for like 3.5 months of the year. Like it's so cold, but it was an amazing experience. We came back from there and I kept working as a rec therapist and we kept not being able to have kids, which I had a dream while we were there that we would adopt, which was a really interesting thing. I woke up, I'd been there about a year, and I woke up from this dream and I told my husband, like, hey, I just had this dream that we won't be able to have kids and that we would need to adopt. And he's like, well, it's just a dream. Okay. And I said, okay, but when I turn 29, if we haven't had kids, I want to look into adoption. And he said, okay, and rolled over and fell asleep. and I thought, okay, that's interesting. And I was probably 26 at the time when I had that dream. So we get back, we're living in Milwaukee. I'm working as a rec therapist. I'm working this time at care centers, which music is so amazing when you work with elderly people and people who've had strokes because the part of the brain that uses music is different than the part of the brain that just does speaking. So people who've had a stroke and can't talk generally can actually still sing lyrics of songs. And so that's sometimes the way they will communicate is through music. And I would help a lot of people do that. So we would start with singing songs, and then we would find songs that would help them, like lyrics of songs that would help them get what they needed so that they could like sing to their nurses and sing to the CNAs and be able to find what they needed, which I just find absolutely amazing. The brain is really such an incredible tool. So I was doing that, and I got pregnant. Like, it was a miracle. I got pregnant. I was so excited. I'm like, this is it. We're gonna have a baby. And then before the end of the first trimester, I miscarried.
Mm.
And as anyone knows who has, at that point, we'd been trying for 8 years. We'd been married 8.5 years. And it was devastating. Because I'd always wanted to be a mom. And I didn't understand why my body didn't work the way other people's bodies worked. And it was just this frustration. So at that point, I decided I needed to be closer to family. We'd been gone for 4 years. We'd been in Georgia, and then we went to the Peace Corps, and then we were in Milwaukee. I'm like, I gotta go home. Like, we're gonna go home to Utah, go home to family. I had a lot of emotional, I don't know, it was a very traumatic miscarriage that happened in the hospital, and it was just a lot to handle. So at that time, I said, okay, we gotta go home. So we came back to Utah, and I started kind of working through some of that emotional trauma, that emotional pain that was going on. And we got closer and closer to my 29th birthday. And as we did, I told my husband, I'm like, hey, like, that's coming really soon. And remember this dream I had? And he remembered it. We'd been together now almost 11 years. And I remember him looking at me and saying, Kristy, am I not enough? And I just remember going, it's not that you're not enough. It's just that I know I'm supposed to be a mom. Like, I know this. And so he agreed, said, okay, like, let's do this. And so we start looking into adoption, which you'd think at this point, like, I'm almost 30, my husband's 35, we both have degrees. He's a teacher, I'm a recreational therapist. And yet, like, it's so hard to get into the adoption world and to have things line up. So we were doing all the things of filling applications and looking at adopting in country, out of country, and it just, nothing was falling into place. And I was confused, because I'm like, okay, I really thought that dream was from God. And if it's from God, why isn't this happening? And what ended up, this, through miracles, we decided we would look into foster care. And we ended up meeting this cute little boy who was 5 years old who needed a home. And we adopted my son, Dylan, when he was 5, and I was his 5th mom. And he came into my life, and the next 12 years of my life were focused on helping this little boy who'd been a heroin baby, who had been through so many things and needed so much support. And the day after Dylan was officially ours, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, which was crazy. And so I ended up with 2 kids in a matter of 18 months. So I had at this point, I had a almost 7-year-old and a newborn. And then we were working with him. He had what's called reactive attachment disorder, as well as ADHD. And there was a lot of trauma. And we ended up in what I would call the drama triangle a lot. There was a lot of inner turmoil where there were triangulation, where I would be trying to protect Dylan and Jason would be trying to protect me. And there was just a lot of turmoil as we learned to navigate all of this, because we didn't end up getting a lot of training, because we didn't go through foster care. We ended up going through kin care, because Dylan was living with a family that my sister knew. And that was his aunt. And so as he became a part of our family, we didn't have all the support that we would have if we had gone through the actual foster care program. So even with all my training as a rec therapist, and even though I had a psychology minor, and even though I had all of these things, I did not understand the dynamics of what was happening as well. And I ended up in a place of overwhelm, as well as a place of like, I have to pretend everything's okay because I'd wanted to be a mom for so long and I didn't want anyone to know I can't handle it. Here I'm a professional. I'm a professional. I work with kids. I've worked at psychiatric hospitals. I've worked in all these places. I got my crap together. I know what I'm doing. And so, but at the same time, my husband would come home and I'd be in the fetal position in the corner because my son was telling me he hated me and wanted to go to the prison and get his parents.
Oh.
And I was like, but I'm here and I love you. I'm here. So there was all of this turmoil as we were trying to figure this out. And as he got a little bit older, it was actually he didn't have a diagnosis when he came to us. That was what was interesting. His aunt, no one had disclosed that he had anything. And I was just like, oh, this child knows he's supposed to be mine. He just walked away from his aunt's house and came to live with us, and it's amazing. So he came to us at 5, and it was when he was in kindergarten, and it was when he was in 3rd grade that the principal at his school called me in because he was in trouble all the time. My sweet boy, he was a handful. And the principal's like, have you heard of reactive attachment disorder? I was like, no, I don't know what that is. And I contacted his aunt and she said, well, he was in therapy before he came to you. You can, find out about that. So I did. I went and got this packet of stuff. And it turned out he already had a diagnosis of reactive attachment disorder and ADHD, and we weren't treating it because I didn't know. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I was like, I'm going to fix this. Like, I'm going to figure this out. We got into therapy, we got on medications, we started like getting him into all kinds of sports and getting him involved in things to help him get his energy out. And like, there was just this huge focus on helping him. And so that was huge. I tried to get him into theater. He did one play. I was very proud of him. He did Peter Pan in 6th grade. And then he's like, Mom, theater's not my thing. I was like, okay, I still love you. You can do sports. It's okay. So he started into that realm. But like what I learned during that period is like, I was so hyper focused on him and him succeeding that I started to lose who I was because I had to be in that survival mode of like, he has to succeed. He has to be okay. And we got to a point when he was 15, 16, that he actually started making not the best choices. He ended up getting arrested for some of his choices that we had to go into some treatment and get some help. But it was actually when he was in treatment, we were doing family therapy, that I started to realize like, I don't need to wear a mask. Like I can let people know like life is hard, like things are hard, like people aren't getting along. There's these frustrations happening that we're trying to work with. I learned that I needed to be authentic with my voice and actually say what I was feeling, because there's a big thing that would happen in this triangulation is I would be feeling all of these emotions of like frustration and anger, but I would be like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Mm-hmm. But the truth is what Dylan was feeling, or what anybody around is feeling, is your emotion. Mm-hmm. They don't hear your words. Actually, what they hear is what you're actually feeling. And that's even more so with people who have experienced trauma. And so when your words and your emotions are incongruent with each other and they aren't matching, there ends up being a lot of miscommunication that makes it so trauma can't heal. So it wasn't until we could get down to those root emotions of like what we're really, really feeling, what's really going on here. I had to be able to listen to him say, like, I felt like you kidnapped me. I felt like I didn't have a choice. Like all of a sudden, like you're just all of a sudden my family, and not be offended by that, but go, wow, like what would that be like to be 5 years old and never really have a choice where you go, to realize you're just like going from like the longest he'd been somewhere was 1.5 years. Like no wonder he was feeling. And then he got to learn to listen to me say, I just wanted to be your mom and I loved you so much, but I felt rejected. I felt like I wasn't enough. I felt like you didn't like I wanted you to need me, but I didn't know how to connect with you. And be able to communicate that at a level that was authentic. and then to learn how to unconditionally love somebody right where they are. So I remember the day that I was mad at God. My son had been arrested. It'd been 10 years at that point. He was 15. He'd been with me since I was 5. I had done everything I could. And I was literally screaming at God, going, why? Like, why did you give him to me if this was what's going to happen? And a voice said to me, I didn't give him to you to fix. I gave him to you to love. And that changed everything. Because I realized it wasn't my job. It wasn't my job to fix him. It wasn't my job to fix my husband. It wasn't my job to fix anyone. It was my job to love him right where he was. And as I started that journey of learning to love him and learning to love myself and give myself grace, that was when I started to open up and realize, okay, like I need to help other people. And I got my position at Center Stage Youth Performers during that time. I still say it was just a God-given gift because I needed more income in order to cover Dylan's treatment. He was in treatment at the time and it was very, very, very expensive. And so I need another side gig to cover this. And I became the music director at Center Stage Youth Performers and started working with these kids and realized every single one of them needs that feeling of being loved, this idea of meeting them right where they are. And as I started to develop the vocal program there, I realized being someone's cheerleader and helping them be confident. And one of the most important things I do in my studio is when someone sings a song, I'm like, okay, what are the 3 things you did well? And we focus on the things we're doing right so that we can keep doing them right. And then we just find one little thing we can fix because you can't fix 100 things at once. You can only fix one thing. And as I did this, I started to recognize how their confidence would grow, how they'd be able to recognize. At first, when you ask them, what are the 3 things that you're doing right? They would just shrug their shoulders. I don't know. But as you started getting them to like really fine tune and start listening to themselves, they would be like, oh, like I sang this note right. I jumped here. I was able to modulate the vowel, or I sang it on rhythm, or I sang all the right notes. Even if it's just, those things, they could start acknowledging them for themselves. And as I was doing this, my son was doing better and better, and I would go see him every week, and I was happier because I'm using my skills in theater and music, and we were communicating at a level that was so much deeper and so much truer. Before then, it was always like we would tell each other what we wanted to hear. So there was a lot of lying happening on my son's heart because he's like, I don't want to make you upset, so I'm just going to tell you what you want to hear. And now it was like, I'm going to tell you how it is with love, but I'm going to tell you how it is. And so we got to this amazing true point where he could express exactly how he was feeling, what he was doing, what he was thinking. And I would not get offended. I could stay calm and be like, okay, I understand. This is your perception. I respect your perception. And then I could share my perception and he could do the same thing. He could stay relaxed and be like, oh, okay. And we realized we didn't have to have the same opinion. We didn't have to have the same goals. We didn't have to have the same anything, but we could like see each other's point of views and then allow each other to have agency. So even though like I am of one religion and my son didn't want to be a part of that religion, that's totally okay. I'm like, okay, what do you want to believe? And so we could go and explore churches. If, he wanted to do this for schooling and I thought he should do this, we could have a conversation and say, well, I think this is a good idea. And he could say, this is a good idea. And then make our decisions. So he ended up being really successful. He graduated high school early. He's now 22 and married and has a beautiful wife, and we have the most beautiful relationship. And I can't say that we're always see eye to eye on everything, but one thing is for sure, he knows that he can come talk to me about anything and I will listen open-heartedly and I will tell him my honest opinion. And no matter how that conversation ends, it always ends with, I love you so much. And I hope everything goes your way. And we just have this peace because we no longer speak in incongruency. And if we ever have an emotion where we're feeling overwhelmed or we're having a conversation, I'm like, you know what, we can say to each other, like right now, I'm not in a space to have this conversation because I'm feeling a lot of negative emotion And I don't want you to experience that because it's not about you. It's just this conversation's not going to happen really well. So let's hang up and talk later. So we were able to kind of do that. So now in my vocal studio, I've been the music director at Center Stage now for 7 years. And I've opened my own vocal studio at my home studio in Eagle Mountain called the Vocal Connection. And everything was working so well with these younger kids, 8 to 18. I decided to start teaching adults as well. Because what I realized, my kids would come in and work with me, and then their parents would be like, can you help me? Because like I always wanted to sing, but then I'm kind of scared to do it. And I don't know, maybe I could. And they get kind of nervous about it. And I started to realize we have a lot of limiting beliefs, similar to the limiting belief I had made when I was 16. I had an event happen to me that all of a sudden made it so I didn't believe in myself that I could do anything bigger. And it shifted me. Now, I'm not mad that it shifted me because I love being a rec therapist and I love helping people. But it definitely changed what my original thought was, because originally I was like, I mean, Taylor Swift wasn't around back then, but like, I was like, I'm going to be Shania Twain, or, I'm going to be Sutton Foster. I'm going to be somebody, right? I'm going to be somebody.
Mhm.
And that shift was a really interesting thing, because just this year in November, actually, I witnessed my first breakthrough facilitation at a conference that I went to. And I had never been a part of the like Tony Robbins or any of these life coaches. It's just not something that had crossed my path before. And this was actually a real estate conference that I went to because my son wanted to get into real estate, and I bought him the ticket as a gift, and then he couldn't go. And it was an expensive ticket. So I was like, well, I'm not going to let this go to waste. I'm not really that interested in real estate, but I'll learn something, right? I show up at this real estate convention in where I live in Utah, and it ends up there's all of this life coaching stuff happening. Also, they are talking about real estate, but the cool part and why I was there that I didn't even know, right? I'm like, oh God, you're very confusing. Like you lead people places at the most interesting times, but it was because of this. So I was the first time I learned about limiting beliefs and learning that you can go back and rewrite your limiting beliefs and then have new beliefs. And I was like, wow. And I watched this woman, her name is Marianne Hickman, do a breakthrough facilitation on stage, and a voice, like, again, God's voice was like, you're supposed to do that. And I was like, okay, interesting. Like, I don't even know what this is. Well, there's a 4-day conference. And by the end of that conference, they announced that they had a program. If you wanted to get certified as a breakthrough facilitator, you could. And the minute they announced that, I stood up and went and handed them my credit card. I was like, yes, that is, I'm supposed to do that. The big guy upstairs told me. So here we go. So as part of that, I had to start going through my own breakthroughs. And so I had to do over 35 of my own breakthrough sessions. Well, I thought I was from a family of 11 kids. I had a really great life. Like, what do I have to do breakthrough about? So much. And one of the ones that kept going back to was that day when I was 16, when I lost my voice and I ruined my knee, because it was like, I felt that my body didn't want me to succeed. And then asking, how has that shown up in my life? Well, multiple times in my life when I was performing, I have a genetic disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and my joints dislocate really easily. So I've been on stage before and my knee has dislocated again, or my hip has gone out, or these different things. And because of that, like I was playing Anne in Anne of Green Gables. I was always one of the redheads, right? That was like where I often got cast. I was either an Irish person or someone with red hair, because here we are. So I was playing Anne in Anne of Green Gables. I'm on stage. I'm performing Blackout. I just twisted wrong and my hip dislocated and I couldn't get off stage. And the person had to help me off stage. And I remember it was after that show that I all of a sudden decided me performing is a liability to other people. And so I stopped auditioning. for shows because I was like that because they had to help me get off stage. We had to work at getting my hip back in place before I could go back on. It was hard, right? It was this hard thing. And so I was realizing, wow, as I'm going through this, I have limited myself for years, not even really realizing it. I had shifted, but I had taken on these limiting beliefs. And so as I start through this process of doing breakthroughs, I did a huge breakthrough with the amazing Forbes Riley. If you've never worked with Forbes Riley, she is incredible. And I am honored to say that she helped me work through a breakthrough of not blaming everyone else for where I am in life. And after that breakthrough session, I went and made a recording session appointment. And I have now recorded 10 of my own original songs this year, though I've been a closet songwriter for over 30 years. And I have a book of over 100 songs, but I've never actually published them. But after that breakthrough, I said, what am I waiting for? Like, life is not going to happen unless I make it happen. So this release this last year of me going, oh my goodness, like I can release songs if I want to. I want to be a concert keynote speaker. So I decided I want to sing my original songs and speak on stage and tell people my story, the story about my son and adopting him, the story of working through infertility. And so I did. I created the Power Within events series, and we had an amazing, amazing conference in May. We had over 50 people, wonderful women come, and I was able to speak on stage and tell my story and sing my songs. And I just had this realization, there are so many people out there just like me feeling stuck, feeling like they have a message to share but don't know how to share it. And so now in my studio, I'm helping people by doing therapeutic vocal sessions where we work through freeing the voice, freeing those limiting beliefs, and then finding the songs that match what we need to do in that moment. It all comes through intuition and inspiration. And then through that freeing of the voice, letting it out, we take on these new positive, strong beliefs that change the way you look at the world. And you walk out with these new beliefs going, I can do anything. The world is not limited to these blinders that we've put on ourselves when we were 16 or 5 or however old we were when we went through a trauma and made these decisions about ourselves. And this new work that I'm doing of helping people do that, but not only that, but connect their true emotions so then they can speak their truth to their kids, speak their truth to their spouses, to the other people they work with. All of these tied together is what I call the vocal connection, and what I truly believe is going to change hundreds, if not thousands of people's lives. That's my story.
Thank you for telling us your story. And wow, just the journey was so many lessons and so many realizations. And I know that's going to help other people because, one of the things I was thinking of, if you can just communicate to someone basically and be neutral when you hear what they have to say, and then they can, you can go back and forth with that and no one's getting upset or, taking it personally. You're just communicating your view. That's awesome.
Especially in this day and age, I feel right now, we've gotten to a point where everyone's really sensitive, where it's like, you're not allowed to have an opinion because if you have an opinion, it's different from me. I have to be mad about it, or there's all of this negative emotion tied up with people having different ideas. And so I think it's even more important that we're able to step back and go, okay, why does it upset me if you think differently than me? Because really it's about what I'm uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. And if we can analyze our own emotions, go, why does that make me feel nervous? Or why does that make me feel anxious? Or why is that making me feel angry? Because it's not what I think, it's what they think. Mm-hmm. So why can't I be okay with them being them and me being me and have that be separate? But once we do, just think of the amazing conversations we can have. If we're having conversations from a place of peace, of like, I'm really solid with what I believe. Like, I really feel like this is what I think, but I'm willing to listen to what you think. and then make a decision. Like maybe I'll like what you think and I might change my mind. Maybe I won't. Either way, it's okay. It's safe. It's safe to have these conversations rather than getting offended, right?
Right, exactly. So at this point, if people want to work with you, how do they connect with you? What offerings do you have right now?
So I have a website called thevocalconnection.com. So you can come to my website. That's how you can sign up for a free trial lesson. I do give one-on-one trial lessons. I also have a package that I sell that is in order to, I feel, to really work through therapeutic vocal sessions and work through and do the breakthrough process. I like people to sign up for at least 6 one-hour sessions. So as you do that, we're not only working through your, I want to call it trauma. Everyone has trauma. Like I didn't even think I had trauma. I had trauma. We do. Even just the little thing about losing my voice, that was traumatic. Even if it's just something you fell down and someone laughed at you, that's traumatic. Like we don't realize that the little things that happen in our lives are trauma for us. We think that trauma only has to be something huge, like you witnessed a shooting or somebody died that was really close to you. It doesn't have to be that. It can be something so small, like a teacher giving you a bad grade and telling you you were not good at math. That can be traumatic and give you a limiting belief. So one, recognizing that is really important. So that's why I like to offer these in bundles and bundle sessions. So I do offer bundle sessions for that. I also have a couple online courses. So I teach the anatomy and physiology of the voice because once you understand how it all works, it catapults your ability to learn singing. So I have an online course called Understanding the Voice that works with teaching how the voice all functions and how that works. And that I like to combine then with private online or Zoom classes or live classes if you happen to be in Utah. I'd love to teach people here in Utah too, as well as I teach audition coaching. So if you have a teen who needs to audition for a show, you guys, my audition coaching class is incredible and it will help them in just basically, I have a 90-minute course that they can go through and it teaches them the 5 secrets to a perfect audition every time. And those are kind of the things that I'm offering right now. And I honestly would love to do a trial lesson with anybody that wants to find their voice because we all have one and we all have a story that needs to be told. And my goal is to help 1,000 speakers get on stage with my Power Within events. And we have a summit coming up here in September. So I'm actually looking for speakers right now, people who would like to speak on my stage. So we're excited about that.
Great, thank you. So now I have a personal question. What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life right now?
Oh, serving people. I love serving people and I love teaching people that they get to create their life. I had really, not knowing that, I've always been an optimistic person. I've always been a really happy person. But up until honestly this year, I didn't realize that I thought I married a teacher. So we are going to always be financially struggling because that's what teachers' lives are. And we're just going to have to work hard and, nose to the grindstone kind of living. And I have a great life. I had a great life, but I didn't have this idea that I could create my life however I wanted it to be. Instead, it was just like I just lived life. And now I recognize, no, like if I have a dream of something I want to accomplish, I can accomplish it. If I have a dream of releasing songs, I can release them. If I have a dream of speaking on stage, I can speak. If I have a dream of, now my dream is I'm going to write the book, The Vocal Connection. I've already started working on it. And then I want to be able to teach other voice teachers how to implement breakthrough facilitation within voice teaching, just like I'm doing. And I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, wow, there's so much more. So what I want to tell people is the joy that I am getting from helping people get unstuck and learn how to set goals and learn how to achieve those goals. I do a power call every morning with women who've come to our Power Within events. And I get on there at 8:30 Mountain Time every morning for a half hour. And we're just like sharing with each other, this is what I want in life. And then we talk about what are the steps we're going to do to get there? How are we going to reward ourselves along the way so that we can make it? And that is such an empowering half hour of my day. It sets my tone of my day off amazing. And then I go through the rest of my day working with each of my incredible students and helping them find letting go of those limiting beliefs and stepping into their true selves. And I honestly, there's not one moment of my day that I don't love because I'm completely doing everything that I know that I am in alignment to do. It's like I have found my purpose and I'm so joyful in it.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you for being on the podcast today and sharing your story and being very authentic with your story.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to share with you.
So I have one last question before we complete. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Don't limit yourself. Don't decide that you aren't good enough or that oh, that happens for other people but not me. Instead, dream big. Like look at things that you I remember like when kids are little, they have these like I'm going to be an astronaut or I'm going to be, I'm going to be a Broadway star, I'm going to do all these things and they really believe it. And then somehow along the way those dreams get quelched. And that happened to me and I wish somebody had come along and said, "No, no, no, that was just an experience. You don't have to let that stop you." And that's what I want to say right now is we're going to have things happen. We're going to have roadblocks that come in the way. There's going to be mountains we have to climb. But keep climbing them and keep believing that you can reach the top, whatever that top is. Because I promise that as you take each step towards the top of that mountain, the view when you get there is going to be worth all the work. So believe that life happens for you, not to you. Believe that you have a strong voice. God gave you a voice. And that whatever your journey has been, that journey is meant to help other people. So don't be scared to speak. Don't be scared to share your voice. And if you want someone to help you release that so that you can, I'm here and be happy to be a part of your journey. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.